Good morning. Today is Monday, November 4th of 2019. Notice has been given of a special meeting of Commissioners Court of Grimes County, Texas. The time is 9:07. Had a little delay in our start, but we are at the 114 West Buffington Avenue, Anderson, Texas. Agenda item 1 is called the meeting to order. That has been done. We'll go to agenda item number 2, Road and Bridge. Mr. Harry Walker, discuss and take action to establish guidelines, limits, and authorization for contract change orders. And our favorite county attorney did some, that's true.
That's kind of,
Well, it is. You're the best attorney we have in the county, representing the county. He did a little research for us. I don't know if you got a copy of that.
I did.
Okay. And before we turn the floor over to you, Mr. Foltz, does this kind of make our discussion moot?
It does not, Judge. I wanted to put these things on paper in the order that I sent to you all so that it would make more sense to me, because there's been some lack of clarity in my brain about how 262 goes with 2269. 2269, the government code, is for public works. If you thought to yourself that it was guided by, or public works competitive bidding was dictated by 262, that's inaccurate. And it has actually been the case that 2269, I want to say it was implemented in some other section of the government code. It's moved around, it's changed over the last few years, so it's relatively, and I didn't look at the dates, and I don't want to say it's extremely new, but relatively new. But because at the beginning of the chapter 2269, there is that general statute that says the Commissioners Court can come up with its own procedures as far as the implementation, it would seem to me that you have the ability in a public work to adopt the provision of 262 with the $50,000 threshold. So in my mind, you could take what 262 already says, it's statutory, it's developed by the legislature. You could say, hey, we want to use this same principle, but we want to use it in a public work construction project. So I think you can do that, but it would essentially take, technically it would take an order from this court to say that's the policy that we're going to implement. If we were solely under 262 and this wasn't a public work construction project and 262 applied and it was competitive bids, though you have to ask yourself, when are you going to have a change order that's not a public work? I mean, that's the confusion that I've had about it.
Right.
Is when is this ever in 262 going to apply? Because it's probably always going to be a public work when you're dealing with the change order. So all that to say, I certainly think you have the ability to say, take this provision from 262, we're going to stick it in how we applied 2269 and make it part of our policy. The conversation, and I don't want to spoil punchline or whatever, bless you, that Harry wants to deliver, but you and I and Harry met and talked about this a couple of days ago, and it makes perfect sense that you would have somebody or some bodies that would have the authority to grant change orders under a certain threshold. Oh, we need a $5 change or a $20 change or a $100 change or a $1,000 change. Well, maybe you have two members of a committee from your court or some other two folks that make up some committee that have the ability to authorize those changes. But as we talked about, there needs to be a monetary threshold, because I suspect you as members of the court don't want somebody else without your eyes on it making a decision to change something to the tune of $100,000 or $200,000 or $500,000.
Sure.
So I think that's what Harry is proposing today. I would say that given what 2269 says about its application to public works, and that you have the ability to adopt your own policies to implement it, I would say if you want to have this cutoff for change orders, that it's not a moot issue and you need to adopt your threshold where you feel comfortable. It may very well be exactly what we find in 262 though.
And the government code you're talking about is the local government code?
No, there's also confusion about that. Local government code 262 is the general competitive bidding,
Yes,
but
sir.
it's government code 2269.
Okay.
So when doing this, is it a sweeping? If the court chose to do that, would it be on every
Public work?
project?
Potentially, but you also, that's the same question of what if we adopt subdivision regulations? Is that going to apply to every subdivision from here on? Yeah, until you change your policy tomorrow. So, I mean, you have the ability to hold a meeting 3 days from now and change your policy away from what you decide today. Or you could say, this is specifically for this project. I don't know that you get any complaint. There's not really a equal protection or due process issue if you say solely for this issue, because you're limiting yourself, or you're putting a policy on yourself. You're not limiting somebody else. That's where we look at equal protection, due process, and have those concerns. So it would be up to you. You could say for this project alone, or you could say generally speaking, under this administration, this is what we're gonna do, and you can change it tomorrow, or technically 3 days from now.
Mr. Walker, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Aren't you glad you asked him the question?
Sure. Thank you, John.
Yes, sir.
Always so much simpler when John explains it in few words.
I detect some sarcasm there, Harry.
This issue came up specifically in regard to the new maintenance barn on 2445, but the general issue also involves the new courts building, the construction work on the courthouse, and then I think we're gonna be under construction on an animal shelter here before long, and kind of the idea came up. We need a way to be efficient with handling change orders on these projects, because contractors are prone to want to get paid for delays. And on a small project, that may not amount to much. With some of our projects where time is not critical, we can give them a time extension and maybe not have to pay them for delay. But on bigger projects and with contractors that aren't necessarily local contractors, aren't as inclined to work with us, frequently they will charge you for delays, and it can get pretty expensive. The change order for the maintenance barn that we're going to talk about in the next item is a real good example of how this works. Chamco was given their notice to proceed on the 15th of October. On the 16th, their surveyor went out and started laying out the foundation for the building. And they called me and said, hey, there looks like there's a bust in the elevation, something's not right here. I went out and met with them and determined that, yeah, the elevation on the plan for the finished floor of the slab of the building was about 9 inches below grade on the uphill side of the site. They don't want water running the building, something's got to be done. Pick the slab up, when it costs more money, more fill, more concrete. Well, that all got determined on the 16th. Didn't see their first proposed change order until the 21st. Well, to make the last regular meeting in October, which was on the 23rd, I would have had to turn in the change order proposal for the agenda item that day.
And that
Details
doesn't
hadn't been worked out. It wasn't ready to go. And then, short of a special meeting, the next opportunity will be November 13th, nearly a month after they first raised the issue. And in this case, they are literally on hold because it's the foundation is only the first thing they're going to work on. There's nothing they can do until it gets resolved. So in this case, time is not critical. We can give them additional time, and they wouldn't expect to charge us for delays in the contract. But at a different point in the contract, if something like this happened, they may come back and say, I've got crews on site, I can't send them off to do something else, but they can't move forward. I'm going to have to charge you downtime. So we don't want to be in that situation. In the past, different entities that I've worked with have allowed either a staff member, department head. I think it's always been a department head, city manager, folks like that, to approve small change orders without going back to the elected body.
What's your definition of small change order?
Well, the state statute is up to $15,000. TxDOT uses that, but their contracts are typically millions of dollars.
Right.
Um, I think for my projects, a lesser number would be fine. The change order you're gonna look at in a minute is $9,000. I think something in the $20,000 range would probably cover most situations. And it's also one of those things that you can always apply discretion. If it's something that is, where there's a decision to be made that might not be clear cut, bring it back to court and let them, let the court make the decision. If it's something that's clear cut like this, where we need to make a change, there's no way we want to build this building, the way the plans show. I would suggest that, that could be something, could be happened, that could be handled at the department level. And I would say, I'm not just talking about, my projects, but, the courthouse renovation, there are gonna be things that come up there. Those kind of projects are notorious. There are gonna be unforeseen circumstances, bats in the belfry or whatever, that come up that they're gonna need to respond to quickly. The new courts building, we're already seeing there's some issues coming up, that you want to be able to handle these things efficiently and not delay the progress any more than is necessary. So,
Do you have a percent or monetary recommendation that you'd like to
Some of
share
the-
with us?
Some of the contracts I've worked with in the past, the rule used was 5%. The way the state statute is set up, I think John's right on monetary value is probably the better way to go. I'm fine with $20,000-$25,000, something in that range. You might want to, on the larger projects like the courthouse building, you might want to go ahead and authorize the full 50,000, because it could be relatively small change in those plans can end up costing that much easily. It's really a matter of what y'all are comfortable with, trying to balance, being careful with the county's money and still being efficient with the execution of the projects.
What about the idea of if we set an amount, but instead of just one person having two persons, since the Barnes and Commissioner Dobianski's precinct, the two of you say, yeah, this is okay. Because I'm
fine
not
with
looking
that.
at slowing down the effort,
Yeah.
but I am looking to make sure that someone within the court on a regular basis has knowledge of what that change would be or what that amount is.
I think that would be fine if you have a member of court assigned to oversee each project, as kind of a liaison between whoever's running the project day to day and the full court. I think that would be, suitable. Just as each project comes along, designate somebody to fill that role.
Judge, with what we've got on the horizon, I'm comfortable at this point designating it per project, not necessarily all encompassing every project from here on out.
Because if we gave 10% across the board on the next project, that's $1 million change order. And your 10% would be a 50,000, so,
Right.
and 50,000 just sounds like a lot of money still, so.
I think percentage-wise, it can be problematic with the larger projects, and what John, read, I don't think the statute really, guides you in that direction. They're talking about monetary limits. I think and that might be something that you want to set per project. $50,000 on my project is 10%.
Right.
It's not so much on a project like the court building.
So, if the change order reaches the $50,000 mark, does that invoke competitive bids for that process?
No.
No. You have a contract, the state statutes allow you to negotiate changes with that contractor up to 25% of the contract amount. And I noticed in the information John set out, for some reason, they changed the downward negotiations from 25 to 18%. That's one of those recent changes, but the state statutes have always given you latitude, recognizing that there are going to be changes, and trying to avoid the situation where you take advantage of that contract and, double the size of the contract, just because you've got a favorable price or whatever.
An example of that is TxDOT not finishing the Planterville project. I talked to Chad about a week ago, and he said he took responsibility, said they were dragging their feet on getting the change order done. He said they should be working on that shortly. So,
Yeah, it gets to be an issue, for agency, if you have multiple projects going on that you're trying to ride herd on.
Yeah.
Or, like this one, I've been back and forth multiple times with the contractor and worked this change order down, from almost $22,000 to $9,000 by making some other adjustments in the plans. So these things don't happen overnight, but if you got something that's particularly complicated, it can end up delaying the project for an extended period of time. And, some contractors are quick to pull off the job. If they can't be working, they'll go on, they'll get more work somewhere else, they'll move out on you.
Judge,
Go,
I think the auditor has.
ma'am.
I just wanted some clarification. The change order says that it's because they want a 15-day extension.
No. In addition to the additional money, they want 15 days because they literally have not been able to work since day one.
So is I guess my main question is the 9,200 primarily because of more dirt work that's gonna have to be done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that being stated somewhere in the change order, because to me, it looks like, oh, well, they want another 15 days so they can pay their employees another 2 weeks, and they're wanting us to put the bill for it. And, because when I read it, I was like, well, now, wait a minute, they knew how much time it was gonna take them to build this, and yet they're wanting a 2-week extension
No,
and
they're-
wanting us to pay for it.
And you don't have the benefit of the correspondence and the conversations going on behind the scenes. This is just the form. But we are changing the design of the project. We're raising the slab height over 1.5 feet, and we're rotating the building 180 degrees because that makes it more efficient on the earthwork. The 2 weeks is because we have a set contract time and they haven't been able to work. The first 2 weeks of the project, they've been dead in the water. The only person that's been out there is the surveyor. So that's the reasoning for it. You don't see all the details behind it. And I probably should have put an explanatory sheet with this change order. But I was out of town at the time this got put together, so it was pretty bare bones. But now, and that, there could be circumstances where they would be asking for payment, because of additional time that was required. But in this case, that's not what they're asking for. It's additional earthwork and concrete.
and that was just an oversight of the architect that drew the plans originally, because they put it below.
The slab height that was put on the plans was incorrect. Going back and looking at what happened, and I missed that. During the design process, we moved the building, and I think what happened is that when we moved the building, they forgot to change the elevations. So the engineer is gonna correct those plans and give us revised plans so we don't have to keep chasing this because that number appears in a number of different places, and the layout of the building shows them in place. He's gonna correct those, but it was just a design error that occurred.
Judge and Commissioners, if I could just make a comment, it seems to me, as far as the practicality of it, you don't necessarily need to adopt a procedure that says that a project manager is gonna be designated for every project, but we know in this case, Harry's the manager for that barn. Effectively, it appears that Al is the manager for the courthouse, and don't know that we have one manager for the new facility, but in my mind, you would want that person to approach this committee, whoever those two members are designated to be at that time, for their approval for the change order. Then you have the question though, do you want those folks to report that change to the entire court? So the court is now aware of the changes that have been made, because when if you find out on the street, or if you find out at the end of the project that you've overrun and you weren't a member of that committee, you're gonna go, what the heck happened here? Now, we talked about, the three of us, you and I and Harry, talked about, I don't know that we want to call this a ratification where you're asking for approval of the entire court, because at that point it'll probably be too late. It will have already been done. And you've designated or delegated the authority of those two members to say thumbs up, thumbs down. But I just think you probably want there to be a reporting to the entire court so that you're kept abreast of those changes that have been made.
And that's probably a good idea. So you don't want any surprises when you get to the end of the contract.
Right.
I'm gonna put out a proposed motion on this agenda item number 2. And it would read similar to this: specific to the South Road and Bridge Barn Project, authorize Road and Bridge engineer and Commissioner Precinct 2 to authorize change orders up to 5% or less, and not to exceed in total 25% of contract, period, all change orders advised to the court. So in other words, you guys would have the freedom, the two of you, to authorize change orders. So this is a $500,000 project. 5% would allow you to make $25,000 change orders. But at some point in time, if those $25,000 change orders were to total $100,000 or more, that's where your ability to make change orders would stop.
Okay, and that, now, under state law, we can't exceed the 25% in aggregate anyway.
Right.
But, and I see where you're going, if you don't want a cumulative series of a bunch of small change
Right.
orders, then ended work.
We don't want this to be an $800,000 barn at $25,000 a pop.
Yeah.
And if we do, there'll be a tar and feathering. And I've got the feathers. Commissioner, if you've got the tar.
I don't
So I'm not trying to make it difficult,
Bigger.
but I want to give you guys some freedom to make it, but, and this is just specific to this project. Because as Commissioner Cox pointed out, we've got other projects, and you even mentioned the animal center, so. I think each one, we would have to change the percentages, because again, 5% of the next project is what, $500,000? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I was suggesting maybe just set a dollar amount. But again, if you're gonna do it on a case-by-case basis for each project, that's probably irrelevant.
Well, we can do a percent, or we can do $25,000. That's, I was just trying to recommend, or put a number that you guys could work with, and you didn't have to wait every time for the court, but regardless of what the number is, you advise the court, so we have an awareness. And I can repeat that for the note takers if, would you like that again? You got it? Okay. So there's a motion before the court on agenda item number 2. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion before the court on agenda item number 2 by County Judge Joe Faust, seconded by Commissioner Philip Cox. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Let the record show that Commissioner Mallett, Commissioner Walker are not here. That'll take us to agenda item number, you can come on in.
Mr. Church, go right ahead.
Okay. Agenda item number 3, discuss and take action to approve the change order proposal for maintenance barn. The attachment, and that is a $9,200 change order on the current contract that was $492,200. Your change order is for $9,200. That would be a total of $501,400. And I guess based on what we just approved, then that would be, if you and Commissioner Dobianski are in agreement.
Judge, do they have those additional funds budgeted in that line item? Are you gonna have
That's
to
an
increase-
auditor's question.
But I'm saying how much was budgeted for that specific project? Is this gonna increase that line item? Because if so, then it's gonna be another action that you might have to take.
Well, this is getting paid for out of the fund balance, and that amount is gonna change. On Wednesday, we're opening the bids for the sale. Wrong sale. We still haven't closed on the sale, and that number changed too, so after that, we probably need to do a budget amendment and line up both the cost of the project and the balance on the sale.
Okay.
Well, and it goes hand in hand with my suggestion that maybe the committee report to the court what decision has been made, because it may affect the budget, and you may need to put on there a line item transfer or a budget amendment. That may be the way that you want to apprise the court, I don't know. But where you're headed with this is you just voted to give them the authority to make this change
Right.
without you, but since it's on your agenda, it's not gonna hurt if we go ahead and approve it.
Okay. Commissioner Dobianski, it's in your precinct, and it's kind of your oversee project. Do you have a motion to make?
Yes, I move that we approve the change order proposal for maintenance barn.
Second.
There's a motion before the court on agenda item number 3 by Commissioner Dobianski, seconded by Commissioner Cox. Is there any discussion further? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Let the record show 3-0. Commissioner Mallett and Commissioner Walker were not present. That being said, agenda item number 4, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second? There is. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.